Welcome to Tales from the Trade, a storytelling space where sex workers share candid tales about whatever we want, always from our unique industry perspective.
You're listening to a show on Yas Network, a collection of podcasts created through Yaswork. Learn more at yaswork.org.
Hey everybody, this is Huck Reyes on Tales from the Trade. I'm your host today. I'm also an artist, writer, and organizer with BIPOC Sex Worker Writer Space, and I've been fortunate enough to do an archival project where I record conversations with sex workers in the South. And today we're going to be speaking with none other than Atlanta's own Lady Sheba. We're going to get into some juicy topics. I'm going to talk about the complexities of intersectionality in the South. We're going to talk about Odyssey of Kink, Lady Sheba's photographic and archival exhibition featuring Black kink and leather icons. We're going to talk about Black sexual politics. We're even going to talk about Magnus Hirschfeld. We're also going to give you a little treat of some classic New Orleans jazz recorded live at DomCon's Sex Worker Second Line with our friends, the Jaywalkers. So stay tuned all the way to the end. Here's my conversation with Lady Sheba.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lady Sheba. I'm also known as Mr. Sheba to a lucky few, and I am a native of Atlanta, Georgia. I currently reside here, and here with Huck today, we're going to be talking about some nice, sexy stuff. And I would say, I probably identify as a sex worker, even though I've taken a pause from it and been doing a lot of archival stuff. But my passion is art and art accessibility, and being a storyteller is who I am at my core. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I've been in kind of dom spaces, kink spaces for about a decade now, just coming up on a decade. And more kind of identified as a sex worker the past maybe 5 or 6 years.
Okay. That was going to be my question, actually, is do you identify as a sex worker?
Yes, for sure. Because,
you don't have to.
Yeah. I would say so. I would say I've just been on a bit of a hiatus from my dom work because I've been kind of dedicated to, this exhibition and so many other things in my life. Excuse me.
No,
that was me burping.
Beautiful.
That was me burping. Sorry.
Yes. Oh, how lucky we are to hear that.
Yeah. Suck it up, sluts. Yeah. I know some guys probably listening and be like, yes, mistress. Burp in my face. Perfect.
So that was actually a great segue, because that was the next thing I wanted to mention is Odyssey of Kink, which
you went to.
Yes,
thank you so much for attending. I saw you in the corner. Saw you very briefly, and then I just was whisked away. What did you think? I would love to know your thoughts on the spot now.
Yeah. Let me get there. Well, I was very excited when I saw the flyer way back in September at Sex Down South, just because of my own interests in archiving and just the way that it was presented. I was very interested in it. So tell us a little bit about Odyssey of Kink. Tell us about how it came to be, and maybe a couple different, if there was a couple different versions of it, or I know it was part of a fellowship you did.
Yeah.
So let's get the creation myth of Odyssey of Kink.
So Odyssey of Kink is an exhibition that I have curated and that I also have some of my work in. It is kind of my final project. I say final, but it seems like it's just beginning, honestly, of my fellowship with the Carter Johnson Leather Library and Collection. The Carter Johnson Leather Library is basically an archive of queer, kink, fetish history. Oh my God. What the fuck did I just say? Oh, history. Oh, so much history.
Yeah, history.
I'm such a nerd if you can't tell.
We love that.
No, but real. It's a collection. It's an archive of fetish and kink history. And it started really kind of in the 80s with Vi Johnson, who is known in the community, the leather community, as Mama Vi. And she is the Johnson, and the Carter is her wife, Jill Carter. Jill Carter was the first Black woman to win International Miss Leather. She's amazing and just an incredible woman. And so Vi is just this wonderful person who has basically dedicated her entire life savings to preserving this history, and has spent money basically buying homes to store all types of books, obscure 70s porn and magazines that your uncle or granddad might have had back in the day that are out of print that you're like, I'm never going to see those again. Like, she probably has a copy of it. Or like, training manuals from the 70s of how to train your slave, or flyers and posters from leather and kink conferences, and books, kink books and things like that. She also has a rare book room. Like, I got to take, I think, one or two of the rare books from the rare book room. One of the books I took was a 1930s sex book on sex in Germany by Verlag Press, and it's like amazing. And so she has that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, like, if you all can't tell, Huck is like basically getting wet from this. They're just like,
Getting
what do you
wide,
mean
yeah.
by that?
Oh.
And so, yeah, I applied and I got this wonderful fellowship. And, they have two parts. So they have a scholar in residence and they have an artist in residence. And I was one of 3 other artists in residence. My good friend Stevie was the scholar in residence. So he was doing work on the history of like vetting within the kink community. And so
that's really cool.
Yeah, like really cool. And was actually at the thing, helped me set up everything. Shout out to Stevie, and moderated the panel for us. And so
Okay, heard. Yeah.
yeah, so that was him.
Oh, they seem like very
Yeah.
well behaved.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, they're really cool. Yeah, so basically Odyssey of Kink is the culmination of my fellowship. It's my final project. They said you get to have access to the archive for a year, and then you create some type of project around that, and you just cite the library as a source. So a lot of people publish papers, a lot of people just do artwork and then just donate it to the library, but I wanted to branch out and do something different, and wanted to include my art, but also wanted to include like this very rich history and raise awareness about this wonderful library and how we need to preserve it and how we need to really help Vi, make sure that it's around for generations to come. I've always wanted to be a curator in a way, and so I thought, why not make a show showcasing my work and the work of the archive. And so that's what Odyssey of Kink was. We're trying to work on getting it out there and getting it on tour.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Before we jump to that, how do you incorporate, you mentioned art accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
How did you incorporate that into Odyssey of Kink? Talk about like, what are your principles or ideas about art accessibility? What do you mean by that? And how did that factor into the creation of Odyssey of Kink?
I believe art belongs to the people. And I'm a person who definitely like buys art, but I think some art is just meant to be shared with the world, and that everybody should have a right to see art. Like, I really am supportive of museums that have like free days and things like that. For my exhibition, I made it donation based. So if you can donate and help out, that's great. But no one was going to be turned away from the doors because they couldn't afford to pay. And that was something I was really passionate about. I think for me, I was torn between whether I wanted to make this, kind of an outside looking in type of thing where I'm educating the vanilla public about this, versus whether I'm like doing this as an homage to the kink community and vanilla people are just invited to. And I kind of leaned with the latter of like, this is for my community. It's for us to see ourselves represented. And if vanilla people are coming along and they like it, that's great. Or if it awakens something in them, which I really love. I love the idea of turning people on to kink. That's kind of fun. But I'm just like, I converted you. I corrupted you.
There's something special about being the corruptor.
Yeah. Like, if anybody went to Odyssey of Kink and they decided, oh, I am kinky, like, send me a message. That's just going to make my day.
Right.
If I find out that I'm responsible for your kink awakening. Yeah, so art accessibility. So I'm from Atlanta, born and raised, and I grew up going to places like the High when they had second Saturday or first Saturday or something like that, where you could get in for free. That was something my mom took me to. Funny enough, like, so I grew up in a house that didn't have air conditioning, and so during the summer it got like super hot. We would go to the museum to cool off, and that's slowly how I got interested in art and things like that.
Oh.
And so I wanted to be a curator and was studying English and art history in school. I think knowledge and history belongs to the people. Our stories belong to one another, and I think it's important that we showcase this work so that's not forgotten, so that people don't think, oh, people like me have never existed. I think it's a James Baldwin quote where he talks about how you can go through your life feeling this feeling and thinking you're the only person to feel this way, and then you read something that Dostoevsky wrote like 100 years ago, and you're like, oh, people before me have felt this way.
We're
And
really
so, yeah.
tying it all in. We're connecting the leather archive with 19th century Russian literature.
Shout out Dostoevsky, you know.
Yo, Notes from the Underground really did something to me, though.
Yeah.
Shout
That
out.
man was
Shout
tortured.
out.
I'm
Yeah.
like, Jesus Christ, dude. I know that man was a masochist. I know that man was a masochist.
So I found that there's like few true physical masochists, and that people are mostly like emotional masochists. You know what I mean? That's at least my experience. Is they don't want to like actually.
Yeah, they
be in
say they
pain.
want to.
They just want the emotional experience of being subjugated. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
Kink
that's
Theory
all you can take.
201. Yeah.
Oh, so you actually just wanted.
The anticipation
Yeah,
of it
yeah.
versus like the actual thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really want to meet a true masochist that would just let me like beat their ass.
Okay,
Like,
I will link you.
oh my God. Make my
I
day.
know. So I love that going to the High Museum was for the AC.
Yeah.
It's like as a child, you're associating this arts space with
comfort, yeah.
with like this refuge and like
Yeah,
coolness and relaxation.
Slowly I got just more interested in art. and
Right,
then
you're like, oh, I could stay here.
Yeah, yeah. And, slowly it was just like, started to go there for their teen night, and then I interned there, one time, and
Okay,
then I worked there.
You mentioned this a little while ago. Just the image of like buying more houses
Yeah.
to store dirty magazines.
Yeah, just like, we don't have enough room, we gotta fill it up. Yeah.
I just love that image. It's so wholesome. It's like the intersection of like wholesomeness and perviness. It's like, oh, let's get another cottage. So
So you can store the S&M magazines there.
do you want to come over for tea? And
That's literally,
Yeah.
you know what's so funny? It's how you said that. Like, I talked about this on the panel, the opening night. It literally felt like such a homecoming going to the archive, because it literally felt like I was just going to my grandma's house, but talking about kinky shit. Like, I came back a changed woman because, Vi would just be like, go in there and get me some coffee, sweetheart. And while you're at it, get me that Betty Page book over there and give me that Tama Finland novel over there. It's so
Amazing.
great. And
Amazing.
yeah, as a Black woman, it was just so wonderful to see an older version of myself represented as well.
I definitely wanted to talk about the local aspect of how all these things come together. You kind of just touched on it. I feel like Atlanta is probably the Black femdom capital of the country. That's just
Yeah.
my suspicion.
I would say definitely, if not pro, definitely like just lifestyle doms for sure. I will say that's one thing that has remained very Black about Atlanta is the kink scene. Like, it's very Black.
Goodness.
It's very
Because,
Black.
I mean, in other kink scenes, I'm from California. It's
Oh yeah.
chronically lacking people of color.
I went to LA and I was like, where the Black folks at? Where they at? Where they at?
So maybe you can talk a little bit of, like, I don't know who founded this leather library.
Oh yeah, Vi, Mama Vi.
So Mama
Yeah.
Vi did.
So she had just
Here
been
in
collecting.
Atlanta.
Well, no, it's not here in Atlanta. They have annexes, kind of like small satellite places across the country, and I think across the world. But it's based in Indiana.
Oh,
Yeah.
they have a satellite here in Atlanta?
They do. It's Willa Women in Leather Atlanta. My leather org are the stewards of it, and it's a kind of smaller version, but the big mothership is based in Indiana.
And where do you think that urge comes from? Because I can totally relate as someone who loves collecting memorabilia, literally everything. You mentioned that you've always been into museums and curating, and you mentioned it on the panel too at Odyssey of Kink. This has always been, I don't want to say, I think interest or hobby sounds like it diminishes it almost.
Yeah,
Like,
a dream, I guess.
yeah. So where do you think that general urge comes from, even on the human level of keeping records and preserving histories? Where do you think that urge comes from, and why do you think it's important for leather community, for sex workers, for Black femdoms, for any of those intersecting identities?
I kind of will tell you a story to answer your question.
Oh, I love stories.
When I first went up to Indiana to see Vi, it was for my orientation. It was January 2025. And I was talking with her, and I wanted to know similarly, like, where did this start? Like, how did she come up with this? And she talked about how she just kind of been collecting books for herself and really just her peers. And she came across a book burner, a man who was collecting queer books to burn them. She talked about how that was a fundamental shift and basically a catalyst for her deciding that she really needed to preserve this history. I think there's no secret that America's slowly becoming a fascist state, but I think slowly is not a good word to use there.
It's a steady
but
pace,
it's a steady decline
a trot,
into,
if you will,
a steady trot
heading
into
into a canter.
When that happens, so many people's histories kind of like they disappear, and when people can tell you that your history has never existed, they can dictate your humanity and who you are. And I think any queer person has maybe dealt with like, oh, something's deeply wrong with me, like I'm the only person to feel this way, unless you grew up in a very, very supportive household. And I believe that seeing yourself represented is so important. But like, if you love anything, you love the history of it. Like, I love fashion. I love the history of fashion. So seeing all the people that have come before you, all the previous other generations that have done so many amazing things, just to see that like, oh, I'm not alone, and that there's this rich lineage that comes with being kinky, I think is really, really important. And so this idea of preserving your history, sometimes you can't just wait for an institution like a museum or a college to decide, oh, this history is worth preserving, so let's do a project on it. What I admire about Vi the most is that she said, I'm not going to wait for anybody to give me permission, I'm going to do it myself. Whether it's community organizing and mutual aid, or putting my own funds into it, as she often does, to make sure that she is preserving this history. Sometimes when you don't see an older version of what you want out of life, even though I'm not trans, like I think a lot of trans people talk about that, about the importance of trans elders in the community, because it's so important to see what you can grow into. I think similarly, in my experience as a Black woman, seeing a life for myself where these parts of me, like my Blackness and queerness and kinkiness, all exist in one, is so important. So it brings tears to my eyes seeing these older Black women who have grown into their maturity and grown into their place in life and are so confident and so established, and who have carved a path out for themselves at a time where that you couldn't just look that up on the internet. Like, they just had to pave that way themselves, and it's so admirable. And if you don't see yourself represented, you feel like, okay, either I'm gonna have to evolve or change, or I'm just gonna like die young. Like, there's just no other option. That's how dramatic I felt about it. I was like, I'm gonna eventually have to do things that society is telling me I need to do, and to see like, oh no, actually you don't have to give this part of yourself up. You actually can exist in all of these complexities. The Odyssey of Kink is so special, particularly that opening night, because it very much felt like my coming out party.
Coming out in what way?
Coming out as like queer, coming out as kinky. Like, I invited vanilla friends, and I used to be hardcore, like, this is a line, you will not cross it. Like, there was a vanilla friend who found out something about me, and I was like, absolutely not, no. Like, I had such firm boundaries on it, and I still do, you know, don't try it. But that day for Odyssey of Kink, I invited some of my vanilla friends who didn't know I was kinky. I was just like, I'm just having this art show, it's about kink, come. I invited my friends, and she was like, wow, you are a bad bitch. I had no idea. I was like, you know, I mean,
that's amazing. I didn't know that was coming out for you then.
Yeah, it wasn't a way.
Congratulations.
Thank
like
you.
Double congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been showing my face for like a couple of years, like online kinda, but that was really when I blurred the line in my personal life, at least. Because before that, I would have been like, oh, I'm never, like, no. My kink friends are my kink friends, my vanilla friends are my vanilla friends. They never will meet, never. And so that was the time where I invited mentors of mine. Like, I invited everybody. It was crazy.
I love that. So it was positive then. You didn't have any bad reactions?
No.
Okay.
I just kind of had reached a point where I was like, I don't give a fuck. I've said this before, but either people fuck with you or they don't fuck with you. It's kind of that simple. And, you know, you can try. You can try, but like, if they don't fuck with you, they don't fuck with you. It's just that simple. For so long, I had my guard up. And the first time I ever got on a Zoom call with some of my sisters, like Black femdoms, I was so scared to show my face. I was so scared to even speak, you know, less like I'd be outed or anything like that, because I was still struggling with my own feelings on my sexuality. And there I was just like, yeah, I'm kinky, bitch. I literally walked in and I said, what's up, you kinky bastards? We're about to get started. And like, it was just such a wonderful arc from where I started, very timid and like shy and very like, no, I don't want to talk about my kinkiness.
Well, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Also, what a way to do that too, because now you're taking it on tour.
I did it on my terms, which is what I love. Like, I love that I was able to come out on my
100%.
terms.
And that you made such a ceremony of it too. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And you backed it all up with history too, you know, and not that anything has to be justified, but I feel like it can be an extra added layer of security if you're like, all right, I'm coming out and look, this is an incredibly rich and deep, and like you're saying, the James Baldwin quote, whatever. Like, this isn't me being some isolated case or whatever. It's like, no, look, this is something that's part of my life, and it's been a part of a lot of people's lives.
Especially, you know, BDSM has often been seen as like quote unquote white people shit, and there's a deep, rich history of black people in the scene, like a very deep history. Vi is a black woman, Jill is a black woman, you know, Mistress Mir, who I also got to meet, who at one point was one of the most photographed dominatrixes in the world, was a black woman and paved the way for so many amazing black women in kink and black doms in kink. And, you know, like, yeah, this is black people shit, you know, like black people do belong in kink and we belong in these spaces. Black people belong in leather organizations like Onyx and Onyx Pearls and Willa, Women in Leather Atlanta, that are deeply rooted in BIPOC representation and black representation. At that, I want people to know it's not just white people shit. There's a deep, rich history of black people in kink and leather.
Tell me about what's coming up. You said that you're taking Odyssey of Kink on tour.
Yes, yes, I'm trying.
First, tell me about where the next tour date is going to be.
Yeah.
And then tell me about how you see Odyssey of Kink and its specific archival leanings fitting into the future or the present of sex worker art and media.
So right now I have a plan to take it to Portland, Oregon for Kink Fest. The wonderful people of the Portland Leather Alliance. I met Mistress Maeve at DomCon New Orleans last year and was telling her about it. And she's like, we would love to have your exhibition there. And so I'm going to be taking it up there the first week of April. After that, I'm hoping to take it across the country, really regionally. I will find a way to get there on my own. I just need a way to get the art there. If you have any resources on how to ship art, because it turns out that is very hard, actually. I'm hoping to take it around the country and eventually internationally, for sure. I think there are definitely people in academic spaces who want to research the history of sex workers and sex work in general, or pornography or things like that, which I like to an extent, because sometimes I feel that they want to talk about sex workers as a concept, but like talking to an actual sex worker in front of them, they're like, I can't. And it's like, are you more comfortable talking with sex work in theory because that feels safer to you? Maybe you want to see what's coming up for you with that and maybe kind of confront that. So academics, you know, I want to talk to you, but only if you're respectful. And I would say that it plays a broader part in the history of humans in general, like, you know, sociology or anthropology. Like, when people study civilizations, they study how people make food and they study religious ceremonies, but they also study how people have sex. And that's a really important and integral part about learning about any type of culture or civilization, is learning how they have sex and what that entails. There was this woman that I got into this really weird, dumb beef with on Instagram because she was basically arguing that BDSM was white people shit and that it hadn't existed before colonialism. And here's the thing. There is an argument to say, like, the history of colonialism and corporal punishment definitely had an influence on BDSM as we know it today, for sure. But to just say it didn't exist in any other civilizations outside of Europe is just I was like, what? I was like, I don't know how I'm going to prove it, but I'm going to prove that you're wrong, bitch. Because, like, are you drinking dumb bitch juice? Apparently you are, because that's not true. Kinky people have existed, even if we haven't called it kink, it's existed in some form, even if it's just been private between a couple or it's been known in like a brothel or something like that. It has existed. And there's a rich lineage there. And to say that it's just this aftermath of colonialism, I think is very disparaging to any type of individuality that that is not, affected by colonialism. It just didn't make any sense to me.
I want to read your research on that. Like, you're going to prove it. No, that's the documentary that I want to see, is let's go to these other places, and like you said, it might not have looked like or been spoken about or called things that we would recognize as quote unquote kinky or leather or BDSM today. Mm-hmm. This is historical freaky sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's make that podcast.
Yeah. I mean, historical freaky sex, like we have a book called Prostitution in Medieval Society right here.
Literally on the table right now. And I know some of those providers were doing alternative activities, you might say. So being in our profession, knowing the types of stuff that we get asked to do, the types of activity requests, fetishes, people just want to explore all kinds of stuff. It's kind of unrealistic, completely improbable to think that people in centuries past, in the couple thousand years, even going into before the Common Era, to think that none of them,
any kinky thought
occurred.
Yeah,
that like getting dressed up as a farm animal and having someone call you lucky and turn you out as the slutty cow of the farm. I don't know.
That's a very naughty shepherd fantasy you got, Huck. Do you want to talk more about that?
I was trying to be historical.
No, I mean, that's fair. Or even like cross-dressing as a kink.
Or exactly.
Yeah.
To think that none of that happened until specifically the European colonial period.
It's just sweeping generalization.
Maybe they have a point about certain types of dynamics, power dynamics being used in, like you're saying, corporal punishment. But kinky stuff in general, even sadomasochism, that's got to predate.
Yeah, because like there was a friend of mine who came to the exhibition and was saying, I kind of want to explore this, but this bondage stuff makes me think of slavery, and he's Black, so he's like, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, yeah, that's understandable, but the big thing there is consent, and when you think about it in a historical context, it can be a subversion of that. What kind of inspired me to really start educating and going to conferences and talking about my experience as a Black femdom is, I guess, the interesting feelings that would come up and the frustration I would often feel of these very conservative white men crawling into my DMs, trying to get off and get humiliated and want to worship me and want to call me goddess and mistress and obey my every whim, which, I love. Don't stop doing that.
Not to discourage any of that necessarily.
If you want to offer your life to me, I will gladly
and your
take
life
it.
Savings.
That too. Give me your Roth IRA, bitch. Give me your Charles Schwab account. Oh gosh, it's like a fantasy of mine to just take a little preppy white boy on a leash to Charles Schwab and just be like, you're gonna give me your investments. I'm gonna need to get those index funds from you, sir. I know some weird business bro is probably listening to this being like, oh yes, mistress. Yeah. Gosh, what was I saying? But yeah, the kind of frustration of being Black femdom, especially because when I started in the scene, it was right when Trump got elected. So it was just this very weird cognitive dissonance of like, oh, you want to worship me, but then you want to vote away my rights. So very interesting dynamic there. And I think for me, it has been a reclaiming of my sexuality. For so long, I felt like I lost my voice around my sexuality and what I wanted to be, and I had a lot of shame and guilt and a lot of trauma around my own sexuality as a survivor. And for me, BDSM was very much a taking back of my power and finding myself not hiding and shaming my sexuality away, but rather embracing it and embracing who I was as a woman, embracing my power, that I could have a voice and be in command of my own sexuality, which was such a fundamental development in kind of my story as Sheba. There's definitely like a lot of symbolism in a Black woman who has historically not really been in charge of her own sexuality, commanding and subverting that with having a white man who historically has had a lot of power in society at my feet. BDSM can often be the kind of mirrored image of everyday life, It's kind of a cliche, but a lot of the guys who have been into me have been businessmen and like executives and lawyers and really powerful by day and have all this responsibility, and at night they just want a break from that responsibility.
It's interesting what you said about BDSM being a mirrored image and how that looks for you, because I've done a lot of fetish wrestling, and I will say that my most loyal and best clients have been Black men who want to be tender and weak
Yeah.
and subjugated and then get snuggled after I've choked them out with my feet.
You know what's so crazy? They don't want to do that with Black women.
I'm not Black.
But like, they don't want to do that with Black femmes. They only want to do that with non-Black people, which is interesting. But I'm like, hey,
So
you know, I'm not shaming.
Like, stood out to me when you
That's
talked
so
about
interesting.
the mirrored reality, right?
Yeah.
When we think about the expectations, the pressures, the stereotypes that are put on different people in our outside world, and then what their deep desire when they're in that close, private space.
Yeah, because to me, kink, and why I love kink, I define it as the unfolding of so many layers of respectability and duty and expectation and pressure. And that's why I feel so honored when people are submissive to me. You know, people think of submissiveness as weakness. And I'm like, no, it takes a lot of vulnerability to be submissive.
yeah.
It takes a lot of bravery to be submissive. And I'm very honored when people are able to unfold that part of themselves to me, because I know it takes a lot of trust and a lot of work to do that, for sure. It makes me feel very honored when people choose to do that.
Okay, I wanted to talk specifically about the South, because we talked about the legacy of slavery, we've talked about race relations in BDSM. What are the things that are particular to the sex worker rights movement in the South? Because I'm not from the South, I came here from California, and I noticed that things were a little bit different in the way that people organize, in the way that people are out or not, that they talk about sex work a little bit differently. When I came out here, I was looking for a mutual aid collective for sex workers. It was by and for sex workers, and I couldn't find one. There was Goddess Capri, her organization, but they don't focus on mutual aid, and they weren't doing like community events. And she confided in me that it's been really hard to organize sex workers in the South, because a lot of people who are actually doing sex work, they don't necessarily identify as sex workers.
Yeah.
And so that's just some observations. Maybe it's significant, maybe it isn't, but what are your thoughts, if you have any, about shame around certain sexual identities? If you think that's connected at all to regional culture or the influence of religion in the South?
Yeah, I definitely think it could be. I find that even some people that I know who are strippers, like sometimes they'll just call themselves dancers. They won't call themselves strippers because of the connotation of that. Or even me, when I was very young and naive, I was like, I'm a sugar baby, and that's not sex work. It's like, but sweetheart, it is. Sometimes it can be kind of frustrating here. Atlanta has a really heavy stripping scene. I personally feel like it's not as big as it used to be, but it's still very much here. A lot of dancers can make a lot of money here. And that was something I actually considered until I realized, like, gosh, my knees are not Megan Thee Stallions.
Oh, no.
And
not
you kind of gotta have Megan Thee Stallion knees to be stripping.
I could take all the supplements and still...
Yeah, it's hard work. I think there's a difference between sex worker as an identity and sex worker as an occupation that a lot of people in the South kind of distinguish between. Sex work that's rooted in identity, I think, is rooted in those things like mutual aid, because it's a collective of people who have this identity, who are collecting funds, giving resources and things like that. But I think here it's more seen as an occupation, like something that you do, or something that you do as a stepping stone to something else. And while we could talk about the complicated implications of that, because sometimes I think people, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say, because we're in Atlanta, which is a blue dot in a red sea, and it's only getting more liberal. I think a person who's a sex worker in Atlanta, like say if you're stripping at Onyx and you're making like 5 stacks a night or something like that, you're going to have a very different experience than someone in a rural town in Georgia who is doing sex work but not saying it's sex work at the same time. And that might be out of fear, that might be out of not having that community around you. The South may not be as industrialized as places like the North, so because of that, people may have a fear around identifying as a sex worker. I definitely think those organizations and those coalitions have existed. Again, those are histories that have either faded away, or they're people who may have done sex work in the past, but it's like a stepping stone to something else, and then they just kind of put it away. I hate when people are just like, oh, Black people don't do that. But Maya Angelou was a sex worker. Like, she talked about that.
Yes, she was.
She, you know, even if she didn't outright say, yeah, I used to be a sex worker, honey. Even if she didn't say that, she talked about it in one of her books. Literally, what she was doing was considered prostitution.
Gather Together in My Name?
I think so.
Isn't
That
talked
was
about it?
one.
Yeah.
Or other people who've done like, phone sex work and stuff like that. But I guess it's different when people are like, do I identify as a sex worker because I did sex work one time, like dipped in and dipped out? Or, is it like once you kind of dip in the pool, you are known as a sex worker from then on out? Or is it just like, oh, I have an OnlyFans, so now I identify as a sex worker? You know what I'm saying? So I really think it's a matter of grassroots organizing in general being kind of tramped on in the South due to racism. And it's not to say, because I hate when people frame the West or the North as these utopian places that like no
They're
lynchings have ever happened, that like no murders, no real discrimination has ever happened. But like sometimes when you're busy organizing for civil rights, things like sex work, not to say that they're not important, but can kind of come on the back burner. Or, for all the wonderful things that the civil rights movement did, it often excluded queer people. I think of the story of Bynard Rustin, who was a man who did so much work with MLK, but because he was a gay man, he was very much sidelined from the movement. And so that's why people who are studying intersectionality within the Southern queer spaces, like that's such important work, because those identities have always existed, people being these trifecta of things, but sometimes race takes such a precedent in the South because of the history of slavery and because of the history of Jim Crow, that I think it can kind of take over and people don't think about that. I've met so many Black men who just see race and they don't see me as a woman, Unfortunately, when we've talked about civil rights or we talked about the Black Lives Matter movement, they don't see the intersectionality of women in that. Or, queer identity, they talk about like Black men are being shot and persecuted by the police, which is true, and I want to help. But then when I'm like, okay, are you going to stick up for these queer men? Or are you going to stick up for trans men? And then it's like, no, I can't do that because I don't agree. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. So I don't want to generalize. I don't know. Honestly, I don't have a real answer on that. But I will say sometimes when race and trying to get your civil rights is so important, that can kind of come first. It's kind of like how the suffragette movement, for all of its glory, was very much about pushing the rights of women, so much so that they were willing to subjugate Black women and Black men
and sex workers.
Yeah, and sex workers to get their rights. Also, if you're
Right.
hearing a meow, that's a wonderful cat.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, precious. Let me pet you.
So yeah, TLDR. It's very complicated, but I think the work of people trying to organize within the South is really important, because the Voting Rights Act just passed 60, 70 years ago. It's only been so long. And I think because race has just been the center of so many conflicting struggles in the South, that sometimes these intersectional identities like queerness, like being a sex worker, can sometimes float to the edge, but it's not to say that they're not there. They just don't get included in the circle. You know what I'm saying? Like, I studied a lot of Maya Angelou's work, but not as much of James Baldwin. And I think that has to do with the fact that he was a gay man, or the fact that there's probably a lot of Black important historical figures who probably were queer. I was reading the other day, somebody was like speculating that George Washington Carver was a queer man. But again, I never learned that in school, because it was just like, he's a Black inventor, this is what he's done, yada, yada, yada. Or Bessie Smith, like, I learned very briefly about her at school, but I didn't know that she was a queer woman as well. These things weren't talked about when I was in school. It was just like, this is the important Black pioneer that you need to know. But queerness was never really part of it. Like, I remember at Georgia State, if you were an RA, you could decorate your floor how you wanted to. And this RA did a whole thing for Black History Month on Black queer pioneers, not just Black pioneers, but Black gay and lesbian pioneers. And it was just so amazing. I was like, oh my God, this is such a wonderful part of identity that I didn't even realize I really needed to see. Sometimes being queer, if you're Black, it's like, oh, you're seen as betraying your people. And these aren't things that I believe. I want to say that. But these are things that I've heard, like, why would you want to betray your people like that? Or, why would you not want to continue the lineage of your people after they've been subjugated? Or this kind of idea of the Black man and the Black woman, this wonderful divine couple that together they're just going to make the world a better place. And I think that it can be a beautiful thing, like the Obamas, like, cool, but it's not the only way to liberation. And I think it's important that people realize that there are other ways. That's why archiving is so important. With this rise of fascism, one of the books that I had in the Odyssey of Kink was a book by Magnus Hirschfeld. And
Okay, yeah.
Magnus Hirschfeld, for those who don't know, was a German physician. He was a sexologist. He founded the Institute of Sexual Health in 1919 in Germany, and he did a lot of wonderful work around trans identity and sexuality. He did so much amazing work, and sadly, most of his work was burned by the Nazis in the 1933, that famous book burning ceremony that the Nazis held in that square. A lot of the work was Magnus Hirschfeld's work, destroyed his institute in the name of fascism, in the name of saving this Aryan race, you know.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to know people will come for
There's a cat on the table.
there's a cat on the table who is just
very
like
polite,
being like,
though.
hey,
Yeah, being very polite.
I'm against fascism too.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Learning about Magnus Hirschfeld and being able to have one of his books at the exhibition was such an amazing part because, again, tying it in with, you know, Vi's experience with that man who was a book burner, there's all types of work that one can do. It's not just going out and protesting, which is really important, but also how are you going to preserve a history? And this is what I feel like I'm contributing to our culture, to our heritage.
Way to bring it all the way back around.
Thank you.
I think that it's totally valid to dwell on things that become more complicated the more you explore them. It's like there may never be a single perfect, succinct answer to some of these realities right now.
A cat.
It's a different cat.
A
now.
different cat. Louis XIV crashed up. This is the life that I want. Oh my God. I did DomCon, LA and New Orleans in 1 year, which was a whirlwind.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. But I got to meet amazing people at LA. I stayed with Mixed Kitty Babylon and her husband, which was so cool. Mixed Kitty is an amazing sex worker, and Dom, the cat, is agreeing, maybe because I'm saying kitty. So I taught a class on just like my experience being a Black femdom in the scene and what it meant for me. So I got to teach in LA, and I was serviced by the wonderful Maid Rosie. Shout out to Maid Rosie. While I was there in LA, we went to the Tom of Finland house, which was incredible.
Their actual house where they partied.
Yeah,
and everything?
yeah.
God, I would
So
die.
yes, so literally
Just,
I like
breathing in that space.
oh my God,
Giving me
it was
chills.
like I'm living a gay man's dream. There were so many pictures of dicks at that house. If I was a gay man, I would be in heaven. Like, why doesn't this exist for women? But it was
Died
so
and gone to
amazing.
the Tom of Finland LA house.
Yes, literally like that. Me, Mixed Kitty, and a couple of other friends, we all went, and it was like this really cool adventure that we did, and we got to take a tour of the house. We got to meet some of the artists in residence, and it was the house that Tom stayed the last 10 years of his life, and where he did a lot of really, really important work, a lot of really important drawings. And the Tom of Finland Foundation, they partnered with me, and they were so wonderful and receptive to Odyssey of Kink, and they were just so supportive of me, and they were like, we're so happy to be collaborating with you in this endeavor. I just wanted to shout them out because they were so helpful getting that context behind some of these pieces. I also taught in New Orleans and taught a makeup class there. And
I remember.
Yeah, I started a beauty brand, which is so crazy. Yeah, and my beauty brand is called Sada's Beauty. And so I have an eyeshadow palette, and they're all like kinky names. Oh my God. I should have brought
Oh, I
it.
love that.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
like-
God, that is so cute.
I'm wearing it now, actually, for
Okay,
context.
beautiful.
I'm wearing it now.
What-
Yeah. I was like, how can I raise funds? And I was like, what am I good at selling? I don't know. And I'm like, pretty good at makeup. And so I raised funds for that. I'm hoping that I can bring eventually this exhibition to DomCon. That's like a dream.
Well, I think Mistress Cyan would be super into that.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
And now it's just a matter of like figuring out how to transport art and how to hang art. So then finally I was like, okay, I've done all this, back up to Indiana, get the material and everything. I was there for a couple of days. I was like balancing like multiple jobs. So I was having to take time off of work. It was so complicated, but it was so great because it was just me and Vi up there. And I was staying at the house. So if it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, I would just be going through
Oh, that's perfect.
the art room and just
Yeah.
seeing what I wanted to include. And she was advising me because there was so much that I could have chosen from. I was very grateful for her and Courtney, the comms director there, who graciously drove me back to Atlanta so I could have all this stuff nice and safe. And then Stevie, my wonderful, wonderful friend Stevie, the scholar in residence there, who drove from Oklahoma to Atlanta, which is crazy, yeah, to help me put up that exhibition because I needed
Shout
someone
out
there. Shout out the
Arts.
Avondale Arts
Yeah,
Center.
yeah.
They were so amazing. Avondale Arts Alliance. They were so gracious and allowed me to have that space. I was on a tight shoestring budget, and then I needed an art installer to install the things. And there was this wonderful man named Brandon, amazing art installer. And he worked with us, like he went above and beyond to install most of everything. Literally me and Stevie were like there putting things up like at 4 p.m. when this was a 6 p.m. show. I didn't know how it was going to come together, and somehow it did. I was just so grateful for everybody who came. So yeah, it's a lot of hard work that went into it, and I'm really proud of it. I, got so much amazing feedback, and I'm gonna shout out me. I'm gonna shout out, me, because literally, okay, do I want to say it? Yeah, I'm gonna say it. Vi was like, this needs to go on tour. And I was like, okay, this is, big pressure. And then Jill, who doesn't talk to anyone, really, keeps to herself, was like, congratulations, Sheba. This definitely needs to go on tour. And I was like, oh my God, Jill Carter noticed me. Yeah, so, okay, I've just been charged to take this thing on tour. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to figure it out.
It sounds like it's out of your hands at this point. Like, this thing has a life of its own. Because I know there's plenty of spaces all around that would be really interested in hosting this.
I'm just so appreciative for everybody who came through, and I just am so proud of, what was created, and knowing that it was a community endeavor. There was so many people that came together to make sure that happened. I'm very grateful for it. I'm very proud of myself.
You should be proud.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Tales from the Trade, a project of the BIPOC Sex Worker Writer Space. Follow us on Instagram at bipoc.swws or on Substack, bipocswws.substack.com.
You're listening to a show on Yas Network, a collection of podcasts created through Yas Work. Learn more at yaswork.org.